Hi there and welcome to the second Q&A answer video for the core. We took your questions on ModDB and TWHL.
What you see before you is Urby, the older, bolder and fatter part of the Scotch and Coffee equation. And here's Archie.
And myself and Urby are going to do our best to answer them.
So the first question from Woozle, what sort of weapons will we be seeing? So for the most part it's the standard Half-Life arsenal.
One of the most significant changes is we've got a new melee weapon. Gordon Freeman can keep his crowbar. We've got something maybe not quite as iconic, but it'll still brain a head crab pretty well.
You won't be seeing things like the Gauze gun and the Egon gun because they were experimental weapons that only Gordon Freeman would have had access to.
We've also got new models for pretty much every weapon in the game.
So sort of bring it up to speed with the rest of the models and the environments you'll be seeing in the core. So for the time being at least, it's just sort of standard Half-Life weaponry. Joe Barmer asks, does Archie smell bad or is it Urby who does?
I'm a little offended with the wording of the question that you assume that one of us has to smell bad. Of course in this scenario you would be right. It's definitely Urby. Definitely Urby. Jesus Christ. There's a reason we live about 200 miles away from each other. That's pretty much the safe area. Beyond that, once you're within that range, it can get pretty funky.
Could be me.
Crypt asks, if you could go back knowing everything that you know now, would you still develop the mod on Gold Source? This is a tricky question, particularly because Urby started the mod on Gold Source long before I joined up. So would it ever really be my decision? Probably not. Would we develop the mod on Gold Source if we knew what we knew now? Probably not. Lot of love for the Gold Source engine. We said this a lot in the last Q&A answer video, but it is so much hard work.
Would you still have developed the mod in Gold Source? Fuck no.
On a related note, Mega Turtle Rex asks, why Half-Life 1 modding? Why not Half-Life 2 or a newer engine? To which Jobama replies, why do people always ask this question? Two good questions there. Why Half-Life 1 modding? Probably ask Urby. I have asked him that same question many times. Jobama, why do people always ask this question? It's a very legitimate question. We ourselves don't really know the answer to that question. I think the closest thing we have to an answer is saying it's like a dedication to Half-Life. We want to show how much we loved the game. But from a practical point of view, it's a totally legitimate question. Why are we making this for Half-Life 1? Why are we making this for Half-Life 1? Someone please tell me, what are we doing? What?
I Am a Noob asks, how much of the mod do you think is finished from your point of view in percentage? So, in the original post I said don't ask us about release dates because we don't really know at this point in time. And this is just kind of a backwards way of asking the same question.
So if you imagine the letter A is 0% and the letter Z is 100%, I would say the core is kind of, you know that Egyptian hieroglyph? Yeah, something like that percent.
Could be more, could be less. It depends if the need arises for more content or if we decide to cut anything. For example, the training section was at one point cut, but we've now added that back in as sort of the first chapter. So things are chopping and changing all the time, so it's difficult to just sort of put a label on it in terms of percentage.
Planet Phillip asks, what will you do when one of you thinks the mod is finished and the other thinks it needs more work? I'm hoping it'll be Knights and Horses style fight to the death, but if not, how about a chess match with Half-Life style pieces?
We can tell whether or not something is finished, and we tend to be on the same page about that.
We work very well together, I would say. We're constantly critical and complimentary about each other's work. We'll let each other know if we've done something good or if we've done something bad. We use an SVN network shared directory basically, so that when Urby makes something new, I can see it that very same day with zero effort. We basically just constantly share the latest versions, which is a really healthy way of working, because if something's not working, you can immediately see it and say, "Oh, Urby, you idiot, what are you doing? Make that better." Or equally, if something is amazing, Urby can say, "Archie, that's amazing. Well done. Good job, you." Which is how we talk to each other, because we are British. I was told someone thought I was American in the last video. That confuses me a great deal. I don't do an American accent at all. I've tried. It's very bad.
In terms of the story, it's primarily my story. And of course the bits that Archie's working on, he's sort of interweaving his own sort of backstories and little side bits, little side bits of narrative. But in terms of completion, I think it's something I don't think it's something that we would dispute too much.
I think more likely what's going to happen is we're both going to reach a point where neither of us can be arsed working on it anymore, basically.
The Glock 2 says, seeing the level of detail in the maps, how frequent will loading screens be? Now, when you think about Half-Life, the original game by Valve, they didn't pile the detail in as much. I mean, the level design was good for the day and age it was done, but obviously they couldn't pour the amount of detail in that we have today because computers simply weren't that powerful. And the engine that we're using has obviously been improved over the years and modified, so it can handle larger environments.
Previously you would have to make details func wall, which counts towards your entity limit, which in Half-Life 1 is very, very low. And towards the start of development on the core, actually, we were hitting that all the time. It was really bad. But since the introduction of func detail, that doesn't count towards the entity limit, so we've gone kind of mad with it. So yeah, loading screens, they're not going to be a problem for you.
And load times on today's technology are non-existent in Gold Source, so they won't be very frequent at all.
Usench now? I don't know if that's how you pronounce your name. Will there be more HEV suited people than Gordon in the game? For all there is Science Team and the Security Force in Half-Life 1. So it would be more interesting having more than one HEV suited man. That's not true. Half-Life 1 has several HEV suited people. Gina in the Hazard course. When you get to Zen, there's a lot of dead Hazard suit folk around. If you're talking about alive people, that is actually a possibility.
In terms of original characters, we're working with a completely separate part of the facility, so there wouldn't really be an opportunity to run into them.
You meet some unexpected allies, and maybe it's not been discussed, but it probably will be after this video. Getting some Hazard suited folk in there is certainly an option and would work with the story. So yeah, maybe. I'm going to be very vague.
There aren't any HEV suits in the core at this point. There's charges which you can't use because you don't have a suit, but in terms of characters using the HEV suit, not at the time being. There aren't any. Originally, no media was ever released, but the original player model was to be using the HEV Mark III, sort of a prototype version. Not quite Ivan the Space Biker, but somewhere between, so it was going to be sort of a clunkier, older version. But in terms of coding and gameplay changes, it just didn't really seem relevant. So in the end, we just made the player character a maintenance technician. He just runs around in his jumpsuit and security armour. So there's no reference to HEV suits whatsoever apart from the charges.
Foreskin Jim, well done on having a fantastic name, asks, I must ask this again. The first thing that came to mind when I saw your mod was a naked black man riding a Segway in a green hat. Why is this? It's a very good question. This is because of subliminal messaging included in pretty much every media release we've ever released.
Blue Dust asks, would you try to use new game mechanics within the mod?
I really like the way this question is worded. Hello? I'm okay, how are you?
For the most part, it's just your standard run-of-the-mill, run and gun gameplay. There's a little bit of puzzle solving, again like the original game.
Okay.
And there are some sort of key bits where you require key cards and access codes to enter areas, sort of a sort of very, very low level survival horror aspect to it.
We want it to remind you of Half-Life, basically. We're not suggesting we're going to match Half-Life for quality. That would be quite unrealistic to match both of our favourite game of all time. Not going to happen. But we've been heavily inspired by the gameplay from Half-Life 1, so obviously there's going to be similarities there. But we've definitely got our own pinch of spice on things.
Biodestroyer asks, this time I don't have any question to ask. Are you sad about it? No. Not sad about it at all. You know, we put these posts out to opportunity for the community to get involved, find out anything they need to know. If you don't have a question, that's fine. No skin off my nose. Doesn't bother me at all.
Oh man, that's rough. That's shit. I don't think I can finish the mod now.
The Unbeholden asks, how do you go about getting your level design unique and interesting?
Half-Life's Black Mesa has a lot of unrealistic areas that don't flow well, and a lot of other areas are abnormally large. Black Mesa Source has a much more realistic Black Mesa. Or do you see level design as something you can borrow from the real world and other games and mould it into your project?
So, there are some key areas that we've released as media that are heavily inspired by real world locations. And in some cases Archie has even posted links to sort of photographs of these real places. A couple of the places Archie's worked on are based on places he's worked. A couple of the areas I've worked on are based on places I have worked or places I've been to and sort of got the architectural style from there.
A lot of my areas in particular are based on places where I've worked and places that are quite close to me, so I know them well, and that really helps me take elements from those that are very much grounded in reality and then think, okay, but if I was Black Mesa, what would I put here?
Every room, every character, every bullet hole, every blood splat, everything has a story. Every room has a purpose. Every pipe needs to go somewhere. Like, you see mods that just sort of use basic rooms, block rooms, no detail at all, and just fill it with chest-high walls for grunts to hide behind and shoot at you. But try and find a place like that in real life. We use real-world elements as cover, so for example, in the cafeteria area I made, I was going to have grunt combat in there. So basically, because it was a cafeteria, I just took some of the tables, flipped them onto their sides, because that's possibly what a military unit would do in that situation for cover, because there wasn't much available in the area to begin with. So, but the basic approach I have to level design to keep it unique and realistic is just that very principle. Every room should have a purpose, otherwise it wouldn't be there. Even if it's just a storage closet, if it's a hallway, it needs to go somewhere, but it also needs to have means of getting other materials around, such as crates, cargo, even water supplies and electricity need to get around, so there'll be cables and pipes, monitoring equipment. Everything should have a purpose. Starcrafty22 asks, we will have HD models or will just be original models?
Look at screenshots. We have some screenshots on the ModDB page. You're probably there now if you're watching this. Yeah, it's up at the top. It says images. I'd recommend that. I am a noob. Wait, this is question number 2. Oh, go on then. I am a noob asks, does Urby have a massive willy? Would I be with him if he didn't? Think.
It's like a baguette.
Jeff Mod asks, do you have any tips for making good textures? I always tend to say the same thing when people ask about textures, and that is make the brushwork first. Totally, like, just use null or no draw if you're working in Source. And just make your prop object, whatever it is, just making interesting brushwork. Like, really use it as an exercise of being creative with brushwork.
One thing I will give a shout out to is cgtextures.com. We use that site on a daily basis when working on the core.
You can start making textures for very specific brushwork so that when you eventually get your completed product with brushwork and texturing, it just looks like it fits very well. and that is a massive part of making a believable map. If the textures look like they are purpose-built for the brushwork, because they are.
Just practice. Get a graphics application, just practice, practice, practice.
Dimbark asks, can we expect Oculus support? No. D10's fan asks, is there a Linux version of this mod planned? No.
So that's it for your questions. Thanks very much for asking the questions. Let us know what you think about the answers we gave. There's a cat. Get down!
I hope you were satisfied with the answers, and that hopefully maybe you learned something. Leave comments below this video if there's something we left unanswered.
We always appreciate the comments you guys leave us as well, to let us know that we're doing a good job, or if you feel we should change anything. Your feedback basically helps us make the mod as best it can be, and we appreciate every single comment, even the shitty ones. So yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we shall see you soon. Hopefully we'll be announcing a release date before long. Probably not.